Welcome to the Last Mark Standing podcast on SoundCloud, iTunes.com, as well as lastmarkstanding.com with your hosts, Damian Salty G, and I am back with my tag team partner in crime, the Marky Smart Trina.
Hi, guys.
Yeah, we missed you last week, partner.
I know. It's been a crazy couple of weeks. If you followed my timeline on Twitter or my Periscope or anything, I've been all over the place. So I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad that I'm back with you guys now. This is what feels like home to me.
Exactly. And it was one of those things where, if people don't know, last week we did a Patreon-only exclusive episode. It was done in a different format, more broadcast type format. So if you're interested and you haven't listened to it, go to patreon.com/lastmarkstanding. Just, contribute $1, $5, whatever the case may be, so you can get access to those kind of secret episodes that may occur every once in a while. But Trina's back, and we've been hustling a lot the last week, 2 weeks. She's been working the Midwest. I've been working the East Coast. Trying to get the name out there. So at the very least, let's try to keep the audience in the loop as to what we've been doing. So I know you've been putting in a lot of work, and there's a couple of topics that have come up over the course of your travels that you really want to dive into. So let's lead in with that. I know you were at a show with that had Big Mike Elgin on it, and you were able to spend some time with him and his wrestling school personnel, in a sense. So
his students.
Yeah. So do you want to delve into that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, so I went up to Des Moines on Thursday. PWP, I think. I've been to so many shows lately. It's hard to remember some of these places. I'm gonna make sure I get that right. So let me get on Twitter really quick. But I went up there to see Big Mike perform. I'm friends with Kurt Stallion, so I went to see him. And it was a reunion of sorts for the Last Mark Standing podcast and Pro Wrestling Iowa. Pro Wrestling Iowa with Dustin Smothers up there. They've been big supporters of us from day one. We've always been talking, and we've never met in person. And so that was our first chance to meet and just have a good time and talk podcasting. And we did a little live show afterwards, talking with some of the wrestlers. And I'm super, super impressed with Dustin and what he's doing over there at Pro Wrestling Iowa, because he really knows his stuff when it comes to the indie scene, specifically in the Midwest, in Iowa. I got to the show. He knew every single wrestler that was on the roster. He knew storylines from past shows and things like that. And he was just giving me all the information I needed to enjoy the show. And I was super, super impressed with his amount of knowledge and what he's trying to do over there at Pro Wrestling Iowa. So props to Dustin over there, Pro Wrestling Iowa. It's Pro Wrestling IA on Twitter. So it's at Pro Wrestling IA. He's really trying to do, the best that he can. He's a single father. He works full time. And so he does all this stuff like on his free time, just, like Damian does. And so he wants to put on a good show. And he cares about the wrestlers that he's covering, and he cares about promoting indie wrestling in his area. And I was just super impressed with everything they've got going on over there. Yes, got to talk and hang out a little bit with Big Mike Elgin and his students. And these are all super, super young guys. And it's really wonderful to see, as a wrestling fan of 25 years who has just gotten into sort of the indie scene, to see these like 18, 19-year-olds who are going into wrestling school right after graduating high school. They were high school athletes, and they're like pursuing the dream right off the bat. I saw a couple guys up in Des Moines who'd only been training professional wrestling for a year. I mean, they're literally 18 years old, 19 years old, started training with Big Mike, and I saw a lot of natural talent. I mean, this is really good for the future, guys. I mean, just really great natural talent. These guys are learning from the best, from Big Mike. And if you guys had a chance to see the 2 videos that I posted to Instagram and then to Twitter, you can see sort of what Big Mike is trying to instill in these students. It's a real love of indie wrestling and performing for big crowds, small crowds, investing your time and your love and your heart into pursuing this dream. It was, I posted 2 videos. The second video is almost like made me a little weepy eyed because it was so sweet. And what they're trying to do over there is really special. They've got a lot of great talent, and I think they've got a great leader in Big Mike. And so I just was super impressed with everything that I saw up in Des Moines. And just to let you guys know, there's really awesome things going on the indie scene, for sure.
Definitely, I can attest to that as well. This past Saturday, myself and a friend of the show, Rick Castle, we went to House of Glory here in Queens, and it was my first House of Glory show. And I gotta say, man, it was so much more enjoyable than a WWE show. And you and I've been to NXT. We've been, we've gone to Raws and things like that. I've been to pay-per-views. You've gone to pay-per-views. I prefer the intimacy of indie wrestling, and I would never have thought in a billion years I would think that, because I was a WWE diehard for my infancy till now, and being in House of Glory and seeing these wrestlers, one springs to mind specifically. I talked about him last night, but Leroy Green had his first professional match. He was the curtain jerker, and it was his first professional match, and he played the face in peril against Danny Heat. And those who don't know who Danny Heat is, he came out with fake Dean Ambrose, as Ricky called him. His trunks looked like he took them from Harlem Heat. But Danny is mute. I believe he's mute, hearing impaired at the very least.
Oh.
Yeah. So I found it interesting to have these 2 wrestlers, one who's just having his first match and someone who's a pro wrestler who actually has physical ailments but is still able to perform at a high level. I found that to be so refreshing and so inspiring. And here I was, advertising for the show, with our last Mark Standing tissue packets.
Exactly. Hustling.
But to see these guys, hustling, and this is going to be a bigger topic point for us, about their own version of hustle. And for me, watching the House of Glory show, there was just so many more interesting sidebar characters where you want to invest yourself in. And it was the same thing when, I went to Ring of Honor back in August. I wanted to invest myself in the characters. I got to see the Young Bucks live, and that was the first time I got to see them live. And at first I'm thinking, okay, you know what, they're spot monkeys, no big deal. But then when you see the craftsmanship, and that's what I'm going to call it, of putting together a wrestling match, and you watch the Bullet Club, you watch the Bucks, you watch Adam Cole, you watch Dalton Castle, you see what goes into it. It's a cheesy saying, the blood, sweat, and tears of it all. But you get to see it on a grander scale because you're so close to the action. And I think for me personally, that is why I'm starting to garner more interest in independent wrestling. So much so, as you know, Rick and myself are going to Fiesta Pro Wrestling on October 15th. And for those that are interested in our calendar on lastmarkstanding.com, we do have a calendar of appearances. So you'll see places where Trina and myself are going to be for the month of October. And I will be going again to a House of Glory show October 21st with Cody Rhodes on the card, as well as Zack Sabre Jr. So again, I have front row access to that as well. So I am so pumped up to be able to go and see this. And these are our high-level stars. Like at House of Glory, we had EC3, we had Cage, we had Tony Nese. These are our big names, and they're still giving back to the independent circuit, which I find very empowering. Because you don't forget where you came from, in a sense. So you get to give back. So like what you were saying with Big Mike, how he's giving back to his students with all these years of him being in New Japan, Ring of Honor, he's able to impart this wisdom. And, I know plenty of teachers in life who just mail it in and just collect the checks. And, I've had my own mentor who has taken me under his wing in terms of broadcasting. He could have been just cashing the checks, but no, he's taking me through the nuances, the ins and outs. So when I see giving back to those that are on the come up, as it were, that empowers me to be a better fan of those organizations. So if anyone, I've never heard of Fiesta Pro Wrestling until a few weeks ago, and self-disclosure, at first I was only going because, Mandy Leon is going to be on the card. So I was like, oh, I heard Deonna Purrazzo are going to be there. So, I told Rick, I was like, hey, we got to go. He goes, why? We're making this hour drive just to see one women's wrestler? I said, yes, we are, because that's what we do here at The Last Mark Standing. We go and see wrestlers we support. But now there's TJ Marconi, who, if you don't know who he is, look him up. He has a T-shirt that looks reminiscent of the Pokemon logo, but it's more like, Butamon, like, whooping people's butt with your boots. So, I that's pretty cool. And he's an old school heel. He's a Kevin Owens-esque heel where he'll mouth off to you. He's a bigger dude, doesn't look on the surface like he could be a pro wrestler a la Kevin Owens, but he can go in the ring. Again, that's TJ Marconi. So he's also going to be at Fiesta Pro Wrestling. So another wrestler that I have experience with, I've seen live, that I'm going to see again because I appreciate what they do. And not for nothing, another reason I like indie shows, and I'm sorry if I'm sounding like a broken record here, folks, the price. You get more bang for your buck by going to an indie show. And I know Trina has said this multiple times about if you want to be a chanter, if you want to be able to get your wrestlers over, where your voice will be heard. I mean, you have a war going on with Sami Callihan on social media, and in real life. You have a love-hate relationship with Sami Callihan. And for those who don't know who Sami is, he is formerly known as Solomon Crow in NXT. So again, this is why we love independent wrestling, and this is why there's a picture now on my Twitter at Dare to Be Damian of me and Rick taking a picture with, I forget his name, but he was the backup ring announcer to Ring of Honor, and we kept calling him Jim Cornette Jr. because he looks a little bit like Jim Cornette. But he was such a pro because the crowd was on him. They were calling him Peter Griffin all night. And when we went to go talk to him, he goes, look, I don't care what you call me. Just don't call me Peter Griffin. You can call me, fake Jim Cornette, on your podcast. That's fine. He actually took one of the tissues that we were throwing in the ring as a keepsake because he thought it was soap. So he took it he said something in the soap, which I found was funny. But, see, it's that intimacy that you get to enjoy at an independent wrestling show. That was bang for your buck. We paid $20 for our seats, and it was a beautiful show. You had everything that you get in a bigger show, run-ins, a surprise cash-in with a piece of paper as a contract, which I thought was hilarious. You had a dance-off with EC3 at the end of it all. So,
oh my God.
Yeah, if I could, again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, man, but it's just one of those things where I see the passion. And that's where, you and me, we are passionate about this. So it's like combining the worlds, and then we can bring in people like Castle Rick and make them a part of the vision, and they appreciate the vision. That makes me happy.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, obviously, I think you guys are probably sick of us talking about indies at this point, but I think through our journey, we've found that we are able to help a lot of these promotions and help get the word out there about them and get people to see them. And so whatever we can do, because we are watching future WWE stars in the making. Damian and I are both been WWE marks for 20 years. It's great now to see these guys that are coming up who I know will be signed eventually. I mean, they're that talented, and to see them at this level where everybody is just giving 200%, from a ring announcer to a ref to, this is where everybody's honing their craft. And so it's really great to see. I mean, these 18, 19-year-olds, they're putting on maybe sometimes 2 matches a night, and then they're helping break down the ring, and it's just this is the story they talk about with Finn Balor, cleaning up the dojo and things like that. This is what you can go see at any indie show in your town on any given weekend. You can see all these stories of Kevin Owens, putting in work and things like that. These guys are going to be stars. There's a lot of awesome talent out there, and there's a lot of people giving 200, 300% of their time into putting in a good performance for, 5 to 20, maybe 50 people, in a Berwyn Eagles Hall or something like that, or a gymnasium. So it's just if you love wrestling and you love the hard work that it takes to get there, and you appreciate the time that people put in to honing their craft and things like that. Like, these indie shows are where you're going to get it for sure. And maybe eventually people are just going to tell us to stop talking about the indies, but I think a lot of these places just need as much support as possible. So we're gonna keep talking about it. We'll still talk about WWE and SmackDown and Raw, but I think as Damian and I get deeper and deeper, I think into this world and attending more shows and things like that, I think we're finding our passions in helping people who are working so hard to make a dream come true.
Right. And that actually brings me to a good point about making your dreams come true and things we've often said about not knocking the hustle. Something came up over the week, and full disclosure, people, I am currently on a Raw hiatus. If for those who have listened prior to Last Mark Standing, I have made it my business to not watch Raw, to live my life outside of Monday Night Raw, and it's been very successful for me the last 2 weeks, and I will continue to do so. I only ask that people fill me in on the cruiserweights, on the women's division, and whatever Kevin Owens does with Uncle Jericho. That's all I care about. Fill me in on that, and I don't need to watch Raw. But something came up over this past week that you and I are very, very annoyed and very passionate about, is the fact that potentially T.J. Perkins, the newly crowned WWE Cruiserweight champion, is reportedly getting heat backstage because he's using his story, in a sense, of being homeless and broke to get himself over as a selling point. And apparently he's catching heat with the boys from that, or from the boys with that. And me personally, as a person who has been in that position, who has caught heat for using my personal story on this show, it annoys me to think that a man's life, because he has the guts to talk about it. Remember, it's not him going on the interviews and constantly talking about it. It's the announcers putting that over. It's the interviewers putting that over. He's not the one coming out of his pocket and saying, hey, look at me, I was the homeless kid. Because there's tons of wrestlers like that. So why is TJ getting this negative pushback? They're using his story as a motivational standpoint for this burgeoning cruiserweight career. Because think about it like this. They got to put over the division somehow. Everything in the division, the two main storylines in the cruiserweight division are TJ Perkins' come up, in a sense, and Brian Kendrick's redemption. That's, and then you'll hear things about, like, Rich Swann, about, his parents were murdered or whatever the case may be. Then you hear about Cedric Alexander. He dropped 20 some odd pounds and got signed personally by Triple H. Like, that's the announced team putting that out there. So if you got a problem with anybody in this regard, have the beef with Michael Cole, have the beef with JBL and Mauro Ranallo and Byron Saxton and Corey Graves and all the announced teams. Have the beef with them. I don't understand what the hell is the negative feedback to someone trying to get themselves over, in a sense, with evolution. We're not in a time where you can just be a wrestler. You have to be multifaceted. You have to be one of the boys at one hand, but the minute you leave that arena, you got to separate yourself from the gimmick. And that's how you get yourself over, by being more personable. You connect to people when you're more organic. People smell bullshit. Bullshit. I work with kids my entire career as a counselor and as a therapist. Kids smell bullshit. So I've always prided myself on being upfront, being legitimate and authentic. So for people to knock a person's hustle because they're being authentic or being themselves, I think is bullcrap. I think you need to take a look at yourself. If that's where you want to point fingers at and saying, stop using your life to get yourself over. Okay, what would you rather have me do? Use my gimmick? Use a fake thing about me to get myself over? Because at the same time, I'm being disingenuous. So you can't have it both ways. So I don't understand why the TJ Perkins things matters. Why this getting? Why do you care? Is my thing. Why do they care? He's getting himself over. He's telling a narrative. He's telling a story. Everything in life is a story. Would you be more interested in learning about TJ Perkins if he talked about being a video game nerd. No, you probably wouldn't. But if you hear, wow, this person's overcome obstacle A, B, and C to get where they are telling. And I think that in and of itself is an evolution of pro wrestling. You don't have to rely on the gimmick, the fakeness of it all, quote unquote, the fakeness of it all. You can get yourself over just by being yourself. And I might be going on a bit of a diatribe here, and I apologize, but I am just so sick and tired of hearing about stop using real life stories for your own success. I don't get that. Maybe I'm just being old. I don't know.
No, I think it's antiquated thinking for wrestlers to think that, like, oh, we don't talk about those certain, those things. We all slept in cars before and blah, blah, blah. And we all had a tough time coming up and working through this business. So we just don't talk about it. We don't use that stuff to put ourselves over. I think the reality is that selling out doesn't exist anymore. And I've said that many times in the podcast. We live in a different world. People are hustling in a different way. This is almost like the reality era. I mean, if you look at the people who are successful these days, it is people who are utilizing their personal life stories and putting a lot of their own personal lives out into social media, into the world, and using that as leverage to put themselves over. I mean, the Kardashians obviously are a great example of that. And so I think people just need to realize that we live in a different world where there is no selling out, and we live in a world where there are so many opportunities for you to achieve success, and that people appreciate when you share yourself and your personal story and your personal struggles and things like that. These things aren't taboo anymore. I expect somebody to give me themselves, in any medium that they're trying to convey their thoughts and feelings. I don't want to see a gimmick. I want to see somebody, who, and this is funny because this goes back to politics, but I mean, it's like people want to see the person that they want to hang out with. That's what makes people relatable. So it's like we're wrestling fans, and then you talk to me and Damian, and you learn about some of the stuff that we've had to deal with in our lives, and like we're open books, and I think that's what makes Damian and I accessible to our fan base. And like when they meet us in person, like we're not any different than we are on the podcast, and I think that's a wonderful thing. I don't think you should meet me and meet like a totally different person. So I don't know. There's something about authenticity. There's something about organic connections and organic relationships that I think we need to savor, especially during this time where everything is just like social media and electronic and digital and things like that. Like to be able to make real connections, utilizing something like Twitter or YouTube or things like that. With our wrestling fandom. I mean, that's crazy. Like that's the thing. Like we're all making like personal connections here. When I met Dustin on Thursday, I've known Dustin through Twitter now since probably March, April. I mean, we've been talking to each other online forever and ever and ever. And then I met him in person, and it was like meeting my twin. He's like a tall ginger, like single father. I mean, like nothing like me, but like we just share a lot of the same like thoughts and feelings about wrestling. And, it's insane. Like when we get to meet these people in person, it's like meeting an old friend. And so that's why I advocate authenticity, and I advocate using your own personal story, because if we're going to be using social media to connect each other, why not put your true selves out there? Like don't live a gimmick. Just put yourself out there, and like, nothing bad's going to happen. Like we're nice people. So it's like, and you guys have heard
some days.
Yeah, some days for the most part. And like that's part of the reason Damian and I are so open. We want people to feel like this is a safe place to be a fan. This is a safe place to be vulnerable. And, like we want to create a wrestling family, and that's been our goal from the beginning. And that's the reason why we are so open with our experiences and our personal lives.
Right. And me personally, just thinking about if we were in TJ Perkins or anyone else's shoes, and we're getting heat at work for that reason,
Mm-hmm.
Like, does that make you not want to be more communicative at work? Does that make you not want to have people know things about you? Does it make you more secretive?
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm the wrong person to ask, because I mean, this is how
I know,
I,
but
this is how I make connections with people. I mean, in my office, that's how I'm known. I work in an office of 15. They know everything about me. They know like embarrassing moments from my childhood. They know, like they know embarrassing moments from my brother's childhood, or like whatever horrible thing I did when I was like a teen where I got like grounded for like a month. They know like almost everything about me. And I think, because I'm okay with that, because that's how I want to establish connections with people. I want people to know that they're getting the real me. And so it's okay for them to let their guard down, or, for them to show me the real, person that they have inside. Because I'm willing to share that with people, and, either you like it, you don't like it. I know it makes people feel uncomfortable sometimes that I might be an oversharer. But, I don't know. Nobody said anything to me yet. So
you're doing something right.
yeah, I mean, I guess, like I try to make the stories funny, and I think it's important to establish connections like that, because that's the thing. Like, Dustin and I had never met in real life, but we've had things that have happened in the last couple of months that we can talk about and remember, and it's like we've been friends in real life this whole time. There was no awkwardness, or anything, and this is how it should be. I think when we go to wrestling shows and we see people that we've been talking to online for months, like it should just be super easy like that, because we've been sharing our true selves this whole time. You know exactly who I am. You know the way that I am, like at shows, and this is what we sought out to do in the first place, was to build connections between fans, and just make it easier for people to find wrestling friends. Hashtag wrestling friends.
Yeah, we're still working on the hashtag wrestling friends bit,
Yeah.
because some people still won't come up and talk to us. Go figure.
Yeah.
I'm gonna counter your statements right now.
Yes. Go ahead.
I am the opposite
Mm-hmm.
at work.
Okay.
I am not an open book at work.
Mm-hmm.
I have never been an open book at work. You'd be surprised to know that everything you guys know about me through this show,
Mm-hmm.
no one I work with knows these inner workings of
We're
how
the
I am.
only ones. We're the only ones privy to all these secrets, these Damian secrets.
Exactly. And it's funny because you know my personal life because you
Mm-hmm.
know me.
Mm-hmm.
So there's aspects that I would never talk about on the show, but things about me that I can trust you with, and vice versa. I don't have that relationship with coworkers. I don't have that relationship with people I come across in my normal day-to-day life, because I was raised to be to myself. Don't advertise, as my dad used to tell me. Don't give people ammunition to come at you, in a sense. So if anything, this show has has helped me become more of an open book with my quote unquote wrestling family, hashtag wrestling family. People I met at House of Glory, they've talked to me on Twitter now, and I'm talking to them as if I've known them for years, because we have this commonality. And I feel that because of me being who I am and being salty, in a sense, it's benefited me to be more open in other aspects of my life. I don't have to live the gimmick 24/7. I can be salty when it comes to like now, the people in the back who are bitching about TJ Perkins using, being homeless. Like, really? That's what you freaking care about? Like,
Yeah.
Take a look at yourself, honestly. But I can be salty about that. But at the same token, I can talk about, puppy dogs and the Care Bear countdown, like I was some big old kid. Somebody else is actually catching, I don't want to say heat, but if you watch Talking Smack on Tuesday, things got a little testy, or getting a little testy, between our friend Dean Ambrose and John Cena. And if you follow Last Mark Standing, past episodes, we've talked about the socioeconomic differences of the Dean Ambrose character versus John Moxley, or John Good. There's a difference there. So I think a lot of people get caught up, especially now with John Cena, because I guess if it's kayfabe or not, Talking Smack has become the show that walks the line between shoot and not shoot. And we talk about this also, where do you really care if it's a shoot or not, or does it get you to tune in and watch? Cena's getting a lot of heat also because now he's been relegated to a part-timer. So apparently the boys in the back aren't fond of Cena being a part-timer. But I'm going to quote something you told me off air. He's earned the right to be a part-timer. He's earned the right to take a private jet, not because he wants to go hang out with, Nikki Bella, because he's got to go do the Today Show, or he's got to host the ESPYs, or something of that, of that nature. And it's like, yo, how are you getting mad at a dude for evolving and rocking the hustle? You're knocking the hustle, but you shouldn't have to knock it because he earned it. TJ Perkins earned it. I mean, he's 32 years old, but he's been wrestling since he was a teenager. That's called earning it. Now, you're going to sit here and tell me there's tons of other people who have, quote unquote, earned it. Yeah, that's fine. But how many of those people are able to evolve in their wrestling careers? Think about it like I told you, like a pro athlete. After their career's over, what's the next step? Some of them go into broadcasting. I've come across a lot of athletes who are broadcasters. They go into business, politics. Look at Rhino. Rhino's, running for office. Jesse Ventura, he was the governor of Minnesota. What's the next step? So I feel like there's a divide between people who love wrestling but that's all they're about, versus people who are wrestlers who have given their blood, sweat, and tears, but know that there's something else beyond the ring, and they're working towards that. And I feel like that's where they're taking the Cena versus Ambrose aspect. Is they're moving past that. And for me to think about that, it's like, you know what? No, I don't knock someone for evolving. I don't knock somebody for thinking of the next phase of their life. Because if you do that, what does that say about you? Are you just being petty? Or is it because, what about me? Why haven't you evolved? So that's a great talking point for us. Because that's the show we talk about. This is the show to talk about stuff like that.
Yeah.
So where's the separation? Where's the hate? Is it just being petty? And you could tweet the show. Tweet me at Dare to be Damian at Last Mark Podcast at the Marky Smart and let us know. Where's the divide? Where's the line? So what are your thoughts?
I mean, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it is antiquated thinking to me. Because we're good examples of this. Like you've done different things in your career. You're trying this broadcasting now, but you're also a psychologist. I've worked for startups. I've worked for real estate investment trusts. So I've been around, doing different jobs and things like that. And I think obviously hard work is still valued, but I think in this current day and age, you have to focus also on being nimble and being able to evolve and change at any moment. This is just a different world that we live in. 2008 ruined a lot of people's lives, and then we bounced back. But it's like you need to make yourself more marketable for I think the job market ahead. And so you do need to be thinking about the next step. You do need to be thinking about branching into other realms. I mean, not just wrestling, John Cena and these athletes that Damian is talking about. I mean, that's what they're doing. They're making themselves marketable for, the years to come, because anything could happen. A lot of people in 2008 found this. You could have a beautiful house and a job and all this different stuff, and then suddenly it's gone. And so what I've learned from that, as somebody who was in their 20s when that happened, and I'm in my 30s, you have to make yourself recession-proof is the best way for me to put it. And so nimble, you have to make yourself marketable in lots of different ways. And so the people that knock that sort of hustle, to me, I think are people who are under a guise of antiquated thinking. It's not just hard work anymore. I get, my parents don't get it, that I've switched jobs or moved, 4 or 5 different times and things like that. And, I'm branching out into different things like wrestling podcasts podcasting, for them, it's like you become a lawyer or a doctor or, whatever, you do some job and you stay at it for 20 years. Every time I talk to my mom, she's talking about getting like vested. You have to stay like 5 years to be like vested. And I'm like, Mom, it doesn't work like that anymore. Like people my age, like are lucky if they're at the same job for 2 years. I mean, we just live in a day and age where to get ahead, to evolve yourself, to grow your skill set, you have to move on to something else. You have to branch out to other things and make yourself multifaceted, multi-skilled, and recession-proof. Because who knows if we have another 2008 coming in the near future, and you have to make it so that you can survive those times, and that's why I don't knock John Cena for doing what he's doing. I get it, like there's a lot of hard work that goes into being a professional wrestler, and maybe people feel like he should focus more on just like the wrestling and things like that. But he's getting older and he's starting to think about life after wrestling, and this is the way people need to think. I mean, this is, like you need to think about your future, and the way, this is getting really political now, but like people in my age group, like I don't think we're going to have Social Security the way that our parents do. And so it's like we might be working into like our 70s and 80s and whatever. We're not going to be retiring at the normal retirement age. And so you have to make yourself nimble enough to work, that long into your career at doing something. And so that's the thing. I get it. I get hard work. I get loyalty. I get all that different stuff. But we just live in a different world, and I don't think you can knock people for thinking about their future and trying to dabble in other things outside of their main hustle. So it's like I don't fault TJ Perkins for utilizing that story to get him ahead. I mean, he's a young guy. He's 32. This is his chance in the WWE. If people were giving me opportunities like that, I'd take all of them. It's like he's not 23. Right. So it's just like if the announcers are going to give him something on a silver platter, like, oh, look at this interesting backstory, why not take it? Like, who cares if that's not what people do or whatever? That's not the way to get ahead in the business. Like, change the way that people get ahead in the business. Change the way that people succeed. This is the world. This is the world that we live in. I'm telling you right now, as somebody who's worked a lot of different jobs, I've worked in a lot of different cities, a lot of industries. I've worked in startups. I think over the last couple of months, that's sort of what I've noticed in doing like wrestling podcasting and wrestling internet, is that my experience in startups is what's helping propel me in this journey. Because there's nothing that's off limits to me. There's no like I said, no selling out. There's nothing that's like too much in promoting. Sorry guys.
Is that Gizmo?
That's Max. It's a big barker. Hang on. Yes. Hey.
So as Trina goes to calm down Max, I can vouch for that. I work in an industry where
so sorry about that.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I work in an industry where I'm paid to direct. I am paid to be an administrator. And not for nothing, I hate it. I hate every minute of it. It kills my soul. I'd rather be making connections with people. I'd rather be hearing their stories, as it were, which is why I love doing this. I love the fact that we're able to do this in this avenue for all of you. That's why, for me, wrestling has become therapeutic for me, because it's gotten me to connect to a wider audience that I never thought in a million years I'd be able to do just by being a therapist or a counselor or anything like that. Where now it's like I'm stuck behind a desk all day and I'm over here, bored, out of my mind and thinking about Last Mark Standing, like how I can improve Last Mark Standing while I'm at work. So it's getting to the point now where it's like, okay, I got my hustle. My hustle is pay the bills until I can get a network job or whatever the case may be, like you and I blow up, or whatever, we move on to the next phase of our life. So I just want to say, for me, there's no more selling out. There is no more. You can be indie as long as possible, which is great, but there comes a point in time where you want to be compensated and recognized for the work you have put in. That mean you sold out? I don't think so. I mean, maybe people disagree with me. And again, you can tweet us at Last Mark Podcast to let us know your feelings on this. Like, would that be considered selling out? If Trina and I all of a sudden started, getting paid ubiquitous dollars to do a show on a network, would that be selling out for you all? If a wrestler goes from Ring of Honor or, let's say, Fiesta Pro Wrestling to WWE in the span of a week, is that selling out or is that evolution? And I feel like that's the biggest talking point here, is that wrestling has now evolved to a different phase. And like you said, you have to be multi-layered, you have to be multifaceted. You have to be recession-proof, or in my case, you got to give yourself ways to make money even if you're fired from one way. Even if you lose income as a wrestler, can you be a TV host? Can you be a wrestling commentator? Can you be something in that vein? Like we were saying, like athletes who leave the limelight, what else they're going to do? Are they going to be broke? Are they going to – I've watched that show on ESPN. I tell people all the time, watch ESPN documentary, Broke, where it chronicles the spending habits of pro athletes. And after all the money's gone, what happens after that? So I don't knock Cena. I don't knock The Rock. I don't knock TJ Perkins. I've had people message me, say, hey, what about Cesaro? Shouldn't Cesaro be getting a push because he's multifaceted, he's multi-layered? Yeah, but that's different. He can leave right now and probably teach language because he knows 5 different languages. But at the same token, he loves wrestling.
Right.
But if he can use wrestling as a means to propel, Claudio Castagnoli, down the road, fine. There's ways to make money outside of being the number one star in WWE. Look at the Young Bucks. They live that indie life, and they are completely happy with it. If you saw them at Ladder Wars, what was it, on Friday night, they won the Ring of Honor Tag Team Championships. Now that they also hold the PWG Championships, and they also hold the New Japan Tag Team Championships. They know they can market themselves as the Young Bucks on the indie circuit. They make their money that way. I'm not going to knock that hustle. People are saying, oh, they're punks for not, taking the money WWE or TNA is offering them. And I'm over here thinking they don't need to.
Right.
They've made their own business model, making money off the indies. So if you have your own business model, why the hell does anybody else care about how you make your money? Are you killing anybody? Are you doing harm to anybody? That's how I often view these matters of, like, when people have opinions and I don't agree with this, I don't agree with that. Is it really killing you that they're doing this? Is it hurting you? Is it burning down an orphanage? No?
No, I mean, it's just a different way of thinking. And I think it's hard sometimes for people to accept that the status quo is different than what they've been led to believe for like the last 25, 30 years. And we're talking about this at an interesting time because right now TNA is still up in the air. We might wake up Monday morning and TNA is completely gone, and now you just have WWE and everybody else. And so I think what's important to remember is that WWE is not the end goal for everybody. And so it's like, let's not continue to think that that's what everybody's shooting for. The Young Bucks are a great example. Like I don't think they ever want to go to WWE. They have their own business strategy, and it's working for them. Someone like Joey Ryan, super successful without having to go to the WWE. Colt Cabana. I mean, it's like, I think we just need to look outside of WWE every once in a while, and not see them as the be all end all goal and marker of success. Success comes in many different forms these days, and don't knock somebody because they refuse to go to WWE, or they choose to go somewhere else. It's just like, we're all trying to do like our best here and try to stay true to ourselves. That's the hardest thing in all of this. It's like, maybe there's no selling out anymore, but at the end of the day, we're still all trying to do what we think is best for ourselves, best for our family and our friends and things like that. And so, like, whatever you think about people's intentions and the decisions they're making for their career and things like that, like, just remember, at the end of the day, they're just like you. They're still trying to bring home money for their family and their friends and live a good life, a happy life. So you know, I don't know. It's been interesting. We are talking about this at a very interesting time because, you know, TNA, this whole thing has been crazy this last week.
Yeah. And me
And
personally, like, I have never been invested in
mhm,
TNA until now. It's like,
mhm,
what is going on? Who's going to buy it? That is the number one wrestling story for the
mhm,
week. And it's so interesting. It's, you know, TNA has been getting viewership because of, you know, Broken Matt Hardy and Brother Nero in the
mhm,
final deletion, you know, and
mhm,
Decay. And now they're getting noted for, are they going to have a pay-per-view today? Are you
mhm,
going to watch Bound for Glory? I'm not, but I know tons of people are going to watch Bound for Glory.
mhm, mhm,
Will they have money to do their next set of Impact tapings? Has
mhm,
Vince McMahon bought TNA? Like, that
mhm.
is the storylines. And
Yeah.
again, folks, remember, wrestling is a work.
Mhm.
They are working us to get interested in what they're going to do. And then all of a sudden, we're probably going to get the unmasking, like the higher power, where Vince is going to say, it was me, Dixie. It was me all along, you know?
Oh God.
Something to that nature,
Right.
where Billy Corgan's going to be like the ultimate heel, probably bring back Vince Russo. You know,
Oh
it's
jeez.
like I have never cared about TNA until the last month
Right.
since we cut final deletion.
Mhm.
That was that as the most I gave a shit about
Mhm.
TNA. So it's interesting,
Mhm.
but here's the thing: we're talking about it, and
Mhm.
that's for me. That's the big headline. If it's something that's worth talking about, it's something that's on the minds of pro wrestling fans. How many
Mhm.
people that we know are talking about ladder wars right now?
Mhm.
Nope. Maybe a small minority are talking
Mhm.
about the awesome Ladder War Ring of Honor show that just happened.
Mhm.
Everyone's talking about TNA. No one's talking about the brand split. We're all talking about TNA. And I never thought in a billion years we would actually on this show talk
Mhm.
about Dixie Carter, but we are. Go
Mhm.
figure.
Right. And I think, you know, with all the sensationalized coverage of the TNA sale or shuttering or whatever you want to call it, I think the important thing, and I tweeted this out, and a couple people have been trying to spread this around as well. It's like, at the end of the day, it's still people and jobs and, you know, people that have families and things like that. And so I actually will be getting the pay-per-view tonight, and I will be watching and trying to support them because, you know, TNA is filled with superstars who still work indie shows. You know, someone like an Ethan Carter is still working a show in West Virginia somewhere where they don't pay him and they don't have music and things like that. And so it's like, I want to support, you know, these wrestlers, whether it's TNA or not. You know, I don't really generally support TNA, but I want to support these wrestlers who work really hard and are trying to push forth the agenda of wrestling. And so I'm gonna watch tonight because I hope the best for them. You know, like if TNA gets sold, uh, some people might not have jobs. Some people might be going to WWE. Some people, you know, like they all have to come up with like a different plan in their life. And so, as a supporter of wrestling, I will watch tonight and hope that everything turns out for the best for these wrestlers, for these professionals who've been giving us their blood, sweat, and tears for the last couple of years. So I think that's for me, like that's the thing that's like I've been worried about, that's been getting lost in all the sensationalism of the story, is that at the end of the day, these are still just like normal people with jobs and families and things like that. And like, you know, in the world of kayfabe, it's crazy if WWE buys TNA. But like, what are the human repercussions of that? Just remember those things.
I'm thinking about, as you're saying, about the human element and the human aspect of that. And
Mm-hmm.
you're right. You know, a lot of these wrestlers can go to the indies and make a pretty penny, but what about
Mm-hmm.
the stage guys? What about the
Mm-hmm.
the ring announcers? What about the concession dudes? You know what I mean? Like, what
Mm-hmm.
about those kinds of people? What happens to them?
Mm-hmm.
Do they just
Mm-hmm.
go to the next event? Do they hit the unemployment line? Like, what happens? That is
Mm-hmm.
what I'm more interested in knowing about. I don't really care that TNA is going to get sold. Like, yeah, a millionaire is going to buy TNA or a billionaire is going to buy TNA. Big whoop-de-doo. What about the little guys?
Mm-hmm.
What about the dudes in the production truck? What about the interns? What about people like that? Where are they going to go?
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm more invested into.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, I'm gonna watch it. I don't really know. I haven't been keeping track.
Well, you can tell me, because
Okay.
then I won't be watching, so you could let me know.
I've been keeping track, and you know, like I said, like we're gonna see a big change here, by the way, in the next couple of months. You know, going to these indie shows, I talked to a lot of people, and we are gonna see a big change in the roster here, the WWE roster, coming January 2017. A lot of people have already been signed or will be signed by the end of December, and so.
Mhm.
We're seeing a big shift in the industry. People that you're seeing in these tiny shows in Deerfield, whatever, New York, or like Des Moines, Iowa, might be gone. And so it opens up a chance for these 18, 19-year-olds or whoever's been toiling and struggling in the indies for a while to move up a spot. Things are going to shift. And so I think we just need to be ready and know that we don't live in the same world that we did even a year ago. You know, like if you look at the indie scene a year ago compared to now, it's totally different. So we never thought we'd see Kevin Owens or El Generico, any of these guys, Nakamura in WWE, but now we do. And so it's like, just hold on, because you know, the ride's just gonna keep going. It's gonna be crazy. And so I think the number one thing to hold on to is just like support wrestlers, support wrestling as much as you can. You know, because there's a lot of uncertainty, I think, coming up, and we just need to do our best to like support these guys as much as we can.
Yeah, and that goes back to the prevailing topic of me wanting to support indie wrestling as much as I humanly can. You know, just as much as you're covering the Midwest, I'm covering the East Coast, you know, with Rick Castle. I'm going to go to these shows because, again, as a fan, I get more bang for my buck by going to an indie show. I get more enjoyment going to an independent show. Some people, they like the sports entertainment aspect. That's great. You like what you like. That's cool. I'm not going to knock what you like. But me personally, I am now a staunch indie wrestling supporter. I will still talk about WWE and the product and things like that as long as there's a big picture, topic to talk about. Other than that, I'm an indie guy now. And, you know, as you know, I've gotten Rick Castle involved with our show in terms of getting him as, you know, involved with indie shows as he helps me promote the show more. And I just feel like there's more room for bonding experiences at indie shows. Because I know Gabby can talk about this. Girl Talk with Gabby can talk about this, because when she went to Raw, she posted an article about how the men in her section were behaving, and how that irked her, that people couldn't really enjoy the matches. They were too busy ogling the women and making rude commentary. And, you know, and Smart Infested Waters talks about this all the time. It's like, you guys need to start separating, you know, any caveman tendencies, and I'll say it like that, and appreciate the performance. Appreciate what these people sacrifice: bodies, concussions, well-being. Look at how much it's killing Daniel Bryan to not be out there. You can see it every week in his face. It is killing him to not do the one thing he loves to do more than anything else in the world, and that is wrestle. And that is why I will support independent wrestling federations, because these people, like you said, some of them are going to be the next Young Bucks. They're going to be the next WWE or TNA superstar or Ring of Honor superstar. But until that happens, we get to see them grow. We get to see them on an intimate level, where it's like, hey, I'm performing at the Elks Lodge in Queens in front of 300 people.
Yeah.
But the pop in the building is as loud as if you had an actual 10,000 seat arena.
Yeah.
And I like that.
Yeah. And so, like I said, if you have a chance to look at the 2 videos that I posted to Instagram, and then on Twitter as well, with Big Mike just talking about, I'm actually going to try and get this right.
Yeah, we don't want to miscredit federations or wrestlers here. So
yeah, it's Impact Pro Wrestling in Des Moines. That a lot of his students wrestle, and so he came and wrestled on Thursday, and did a show over there, and he thanked the crowd over there in Des Moines for supporting shows like that, because, you know, he's got a lot of young talent that he's teaching and mentoring, and it's shows like that where they learn like the business. And I have to say, I have to give props to the crowd over there in Des Moines, because that was one of the best indie wrestling crowds that I'd seen in a while. You know, not super big, is probably the same amount that fit into Berwyn Eagles Club in Berwyn. But these fans are very invested. You know, they're there every month. They know their local wrestlers. They know the storylines. They know who they're supposed to boo and who they're supposed to cheer for. Kurt Stallion was wrestling and he was laying on the mat, and a little girl went up to him and just went right in his face and was like, "You need to get up and be a man." And like,
oh wow.
And he's like, I broke character because I just thought it was so funny. So I broke character for a bit, and he like laughed, and then he like got up, and it's stuff like that. Like, it's so great to see children so invested in these guys' careers, because they're giving, like I said, blood, sweat, tears to try and make this happen, and to see a crowd, especially of children, who understands that and is trying to help them reach their goals is just really beautiful. It's a really wonderful thing. I mean, if you're a wrestling fan, I mean, this is just the core of it right here. A little girl telling you to get up and be a man, like, it doesn't get any better than that. She was like 5 years old, so she only reached like the top of the mat. And so her face was like right in his face. And then she's just like, get up and be a man. Like, and I have a picture, I'll post the picture later. That's what it's about, guys. It's just awesome.
I love that. It's like, see, I love that. And I love that he can break character to laugh about this.
Yeah.
Even if it's for 10 seconds, then say, you know what, that's what it's all about. Like getting the fans invested in the story to the point where they boo you, they cheer you, but they're invested in you. They care about you, which goes back. And I know we got to get out of here soon, but I do want to address this as a follow-up from the episode I did last week. Again, if you don't know that episode, it's on a Patreon exclusive. Go to patreon.com/lastmarkstanding or go to lastmarkstanding.com and follow the links to see how you can support us on Patreon. I talked about how I was pissed off, and I did this on Rant with Ant. I don't know. I did Rant with Ant this week also. How during the TJ Perkins Tony Nese match, people were chanting CM Punk. Now, you and I have been on this train for weeks now, months now, about douchebag fan A, B, and C who make the show about them and aren't appreciating what's really going on in the ring. We talked about this on Bear Hug It Out. I talked about this on Rant with Ant. I talked about this last week, and it still keeps popping up. Tony Nese, who I saw at House of Glory 2 days later, is at Monday Night Raw taking on the Cruiserweight Champion of the World. And what are they chanting? Randy Savage, CM Punk, and things like that. Like that's what you want to waste your time on. And big shout out to Mimi, because she heard the rant and she countered with, because I made a comment about, I can see you booing a Orton versus Sheamus match because we've seen it 3 billion times. But Mimi also said, hey, don't they matter because they're busting their ass in the ring too? So I said, okay, I'll give you that. What I will do, instead of getting in on those chants, I won't be that guy, but what I'll do is I'll use that as my snack break. I'll go get snacks. I'll go take a piss. I won't boo, and I won't be the one to like make it about myself. But at the same token, you got these wonderful athletes, not plotting. It's not Hogan v. Warrior. It's not two big plotting big guys that can't move. It is athletic competition. And what are you cheering for? A guy who just lost an MMA fight. A guy who will never be back in the Federation unless the price is right. You're cheering for a guy who's deceased. You're cheering for RVD, who's not going to come back anytime soon. Why not chant for TJ Perkins? Why don't you like that? I would love someone who was at that show and who was doing the RVD CM Punk chants to tweet me at Dare to be Damian and let me know, why are you doing that? Is it because you're sheep, or is it because you really didn't like the match? Because there's got to be a reason. Because Ant countered with, they were probably drunk. I'll give him that. If you're drunk, don't be a jackass. Rule number 1, don't be a dick. That is the universal law of life. If you're not a dick, good things happen. And for me personally, knowing that TJ Perkins, Tony Nese, Rich Swann, Cedric Alexander, all of them are busting their ass in the ring day in, day out to get your attention in a little 10-minute block that Raw gave them, and the most you can give them is not applause, is not holy shit, it's Randy Savage and CM Punk. And I am getting really sick and tired of it. And I know you are, and I know people are tired of me talking about it, but as long as it keeps being an issue, I'm still going to fight the issue.
Uh, I love it. I love the passion. But I have to say, I did come to a realization this week, and I meant to bring it up with you here on the show. I think we might have to just come to terms with the fact that the people who attend live shows, the majority of them, are not fans like us. They are way more casual. They don't listen to podcasts. They don't watch NXT. They don't know about the Cruiserweight Classic because I think, when we keep reporting from going to these events, we keep talking about meeting fans who, those guys who'd never seen NXT before. And what I've seen, because I've been to a couple Raws, and I tell people that, oh yeah, I went to Raw, I went to SmackDown. What I get is a lot of casuals who say they would love to go to the show, who've not watched the product in 5 years, but like they would go to a Raw. You know what I mean? So I think that's the weird thing. I think we're mistaking the fact that we talk about wrestling this way, we cover wrestling this way, and we think that those are the people I think that we're surrounded with when we go to live shows. But I think the reality is probably it's just casuals, and so all they see is like Sasha Banks being hot or Charlotte being hot. They have no idea what the current storyline is. They haven't watched the product in like 5-6 years, because I think you just have to think about the mentality of someone who attends a live show versus somebody who covers it like we do. I mean, before this year, even though we were big wrestling fans, we weren't attending as many shows as we did this year. I think at the end of the day, I think the person that does attend a live show maybe is more of a casual. And so I not saying that we should ignore it, but I think we're shouting into a void at this point. Because I think the assholes who are trying to put themselves over at shows, aren't even watching shows like us, like they're not investing themselves like that deeply into the product. I think what you have are casuals who just show up and feed into the mob like mentality and see like a couple of dudes chanting something and they're like, oh yeah, this is fun. Like, it's like one in Rome, they just like don't know anything about the current product. They don't know anything about what's going on, and they just show up at the show and they're like, oh, this is what people are doing, I'm going to do this too. And we might have to just come to terms with that as diehard fans who care about the sport and who report on wrestling. I think we're going to be, unless you're going to an indie show, you're going to be surrounded by casuals. Like that's the thing. Like if you go to Raw, if you go to any big event, the likelihood of you being surrounded by casuals goes up exponentially. And the same happens, in MMA, because I attend Invicta shows here in Kansas City, which is all women's MMA. And I have to tell you, those crowds are amazing, respectful, because everybody in that crowd knows about women's MMA. They know every single person that's on the card. They know the histories. They know so these are diehard fans. But if you go to like McGregor Diaz, like 80% of that crowd is casuals. Right. And it's like when you're in the crowd with them, you can hear them, like their lack of knowledge about like the actual sport and things like that. And so I think we might, like when we go out in the wild, like we're not going to encounter people like us. And that's the thing. That's why we cultivate this wrestling family online through YouTube, through like chat and things like that. Because the reality is that when we go out there, even if we go to like Monday Night Raw or SmackDown or WrestleMania or SummerSlam, we're not going to be surrounded by people like us. So I think that might be what we have to come to terms with. I mean, and it's like, again, maybe the answer is just to drown out the jackasses and show them that like this is not how we act. There's decorum, and this is not how we act at wrestling shows. But we might be shouting into a void because these people they're not listening to our podcast. They're not listening to Rant with Ant. They're not listening to Bear Hug It Out. These are just dudes who like heard that Raw was in town and like got a bunch of their buddies and just showed up, and they haven't watched since like The Rock. I mean, like I all the props to the guy over at Lids that helped with our hats, Jesse. He is a fantastic guy, but he's exactly my point, my example in this, because he hasn't watched the product in, I say, 5 or 6 years, but he talked about like going to Raw and wanting to go to Raw. Like he just goes to Raw because it's like something to do, and it's like a cool thing to do. And, like he likes wrestling, so why not go to a live show? but he's definitely not somebody that's covering wrestling on a daily basis like us, and thinking about it deeply and following the product as closely as we are. So, I mean, I don't know. I think you kind of just have to come to terms with that's what you're surrounded with most of the time. You know, I'm not going to say smarks, we're intelligent fans. We think about things thoughtfully and deeply, and not everybody's going to be like that.
Yeah, well, I refuse to die. I'm not gonna give up. I'm going to educate folk from now on. Instead of just being mad about it, I'm just gonna take the time to educate folk, like you said, and express the decorum aspects of pro wrestling. I can tell you right now, like, I've been guilty of doing a chant, but it wasn't to the point where I distracted from the match. I can tell you right now, House of Glory, Rick and I, whenever the ref was counting and, they kick it at 2, we would scream out "dos," know, to the point where, like, the ref finally caved and said "dos" after he counted. We were like, yeah, like, we got him to cave, and it was like, all right, that's it. We're not going to keep going and be douchey about it. But he broke character. He gave in. He said "dos," and everybody got a good laugh, and they applauded.
Right.
And that was it. But we didn't do the whole Ring of Harambe chant.
Yeah.
We weren't chanting CM Punk. We weren't chanting, Randy Savage or "This is filler." If you remember the NXT show recently, I believe it was Aaliyah against Billy Kay and someone, and they started a chant called "This is filler." But what I also picked up on the broadcast was that was drowned out really quickly. So I don't know if production did it or if the fans drowned that out after the fact, because you hear booing when they start saying that. So maybe we do have fans who don't like that nonsense. Maybe we have fans who are smart to say, shut the F up, let the wrestlers do what they got to do. And maybe because Full Sail is a little bit more intimate, you can get away with drowning out the noise, in a sense, where you can't do it at an arena. It goes back with sports, like we've talked about. You can have the drunk, liquored up a-hole in section 700, screaming, at the top of his lungs, or the dude sitting courtside who thinks it's a free reign to cuss out a pro athlete because they paid for the seat.
Right.
You ain't the show, man. I hate to break it to you, people. You're not the show. No one's paying to see you go to a game. You're paying to go to a match to see performers. You are not the show. And I think if that's the number one thing I can get across to people is you are not the show. So I think that's where I'm going to stop, the venting and planting my flag in the whole take you fans to task, so to speak.
Yeah.
We've been doing it for a month now. It's almost 2 months now. We've talked about it on various shows. Like I said, we've talked about it on Bear Hug It Out. Talked about it on Rant with Ant. You and I have talked about it ad nauseum to fans in person and on this show. So this is the last time I'm going to say it. If I catch you doing it, I'm going to find a way to correct you. I'm not going to be an asshole to you. I'm not going to be a dick, because that's not what I do. But I will correct you in an educational manner in which it's like, dude, enjoy the match. You're not the show. Just keep it moving from that.
Oh, I love it.
By the way, before we get off the air, I just want to mention one thing I saw making the rounds on Twitter. Charlotte's moonsault is a thing of beauty. It's majestic. I don't know. I didn't know a woman. I don't want to say a woman can't do that, but to see an athletic woman do that so effortlessly makes me happy as a fan. You don't have to do crazy spots. Like the tope suicida needs to stop.
Yes,
because Sasha's gonna die. Big E's
Cesaro's
gonna die.
Cesaro's
gonna die. But to watch Charlotte occasionally pull out that beautiful moonsault is a thing of beauty. So big ups to Charlotte for being such athletically gifted, graceful in the ring. And remember, she started off green as F. If you watch her early NXT stuff, Summer Rae was the head B in charge of that group. So to see how far she's evolved, and Sasha's evolved, and Bayley's evolved, and ties back into what we were talking about, evolution and evolving as a wrestler, as a broadcaster, anything you do in life, I love it. And it brings me so much joy to see people evolving at their craft. Same with Roman Reigns. He's been evolving. People still hate on him. Not me. I'm not on that train. I'm seeing the evolution of Roman Reigns. I'm seeing the evolution of all these wrestlers who started off at the bottom. Now they're here, so to speak. And that's what I've been trying to get across this whole episode. And I hope the audience understands where I'm coming from. Because that's where I'm coming from. It's evolution.
Right.
So go back to this, the point you were trying to make. I'm sorry.
Well, so really quick to touch on what you're talking about. I think that's what it comes down to, is give these guys room to grow. Don't expect a fully completed product right in front of you the second they make the main roster. In life, people should be allowed to grow and evolve and change. So why shouldn't these wrestlers be allowed to do the same thing? Especially in the current landscape where we have so many injuries and people are being called up early and things like that. It's just, imagine you get promoted for some reason and suddenly you gotta step up. I mean, it's like, this is just life. Let people improve themselves without having to tear them down and give them any criticism for them not being what you think they should be at a certain point in their career. But I wanted to touch really quickly on, because I know we were supposed to actually originally record on Wednesday, and I'm sorry, you guys, I had a migraine, it was pretty bad, and so Damian put out a couple calls for questions, and I remember going through some of the questions, and I wanted to address one really quickly. So Ryan Franson, who's been a fan for a long time, he's a great supporter of the show, I think he had a question about, if when we were kids, did we ever want to be those wrestlers that were occupations, you know what I mean? You had Duke the Dumpster Drosy or whatever, right? It's just when you were a kid, you're like, oh man, I would really love to grow up and be a garbage man or whatever. And so I have an interesting story because my life is weird. I think you guys know that, but I repoed for a while. So I was a repo man for 6 months. So
what?
we will leave that story for a Last Mark Standing after hours or after dark. We'll do a Patreon only special Last Mark Standing, where we don't talk about wrestling so much, and I will tell you guys about my days of being a repo man.
I didn't even know you were a repo man, so
I know.
That is something I want to find out more about.
Right, exactly. We'll become a Patreon, and we will do these extra episodes where we talk a little bit outside of wrestling. Maybe talk about some of these weird things that happened in our lives. I have a lot of stories, and I know Damian has a lot of stories, and you guys have gotten to know us here in the last couple of months, and I'm sure you might be interested in some of these little side non-wrestling related stories that we have to tell.
Agreed. So you apply on Patreon. Again, you can contribute $1, $5. The Masked Fan, who's one of our ride or dies, he just became a patron. He contributed $5, so shout out to him. Spark Infested Waters, shout out to them. Mimi, shout out to you for being ride or die patrons, no matter what. William, and so on and so forth. These are people that contribute whatever they can. $1, $5. We don't care. We're not doing this for profit. We're doing this. Well, we're doing this because we love to do it. That's the number one thing. But everything we make from Patreon goes back into the brand. We don't pocket any of this. It helps pay for the hats. It helps pay for us to go to wrestling events that we cover and bring it back to you. So it's not like we're going just to, for me to buy a Express sweater or something. No, I'm putting it all back into the brand so I can attend events, so we can buy hats and make hats and make merch. So don't think just because oh, well, we're giving you money for this. Don't pocket it. Trust us.
Right.
We're not pocketing it.
No, I mean, and officially, I'll say this, with the hats, I'm in the red at this point. I started this thing with Eat, Pray, Love Wrestling sort of sojourn, and I had some savings and but now that I'm pushing it at the level that I'm pushing it, I am not breaking even, and I'm in the red. So anything you guys can do to help is fantastic. Damian wants to do this full time. He's doing the people's work over at his other job, but this is something that he'd like to transition to full time at some point.
Right. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life, until I die. So I can't do that if I don't get the work in. I don't put the work in. I can't do that. For anyone to do anything professionally, you'd have to have over 10,000 hours of rep time in your lifetime to be good at something. So this is what I do. Every week we do a show. We're going to start doing Patreon only shows where, we may be touching on delicate topics is what I'll say. And you'll learn some more interesting stuff about myself and about Trina. And we're open books, but at the same time, after dark and after hours, who knows what kind of books we're going to open. If you watch the one episode we did about Dana Brooke and comparing it to Brazzers, and just
gives you a taste of stuff that we have to offer here.
Yeah. So patreon.com/lastmarkstanding, lastmarkstanding.com for your one-stop Last Mark Standing needs. Find us on Twitter at Last Mark Podcast, myself at Dare to be Damian, Trina at the Marky Smark. We're on iTunes and SoundCloud and various streaming locales. So again, let us know what you think. You tweet the show, buy our merch, support us so we can put all the money back into the business, help us grow this business, because we want to evolve in, keeping in the theme of today's episode. So everyone who's listening on YouTube, who's watching this, and who will download this episode later, thank you so much from Trina and myself, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.